Hello, welcome to Human Tech, a podcast about the intersection between humans and technology. My name is Guthrie. I'm here with Susan. Hi, Susan.
Hey, Guthrie.
And are you doing our guest introductions today?
I will. We have a guest with us. We have Russ Branaghan, and he has multiple affiliations and titles. So bear with me here. I'm going to tell you about them. First of all, he is president of a company called Research Collective, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about what Research Collective does. He's also an author, so we're going to be talking about one of his recent books. And he's an emeritus professor at Arizona State University. And so we're going to talk about that too. So we got lots of stuff to talk about. But Russ, thank you for coming on the podcast with us.
Well, you're welcome. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Boy, where should we start? I'm going to pick. How about that?
Sure. Sounds good.
Let's start with the book.
Okay.
And you said, I wrote this down, you said the name of the book is Humanizing Healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
Human Factors for Medical Device Design.
Exactly. That is it.
So we're talking about human factors stuff, and
Yep.
we're talking about designing for medical devices. So, and I gather that this is what your company does as well.
It does.
Human factors work for medical devices. And I don't know if you know that I've done a little bit
Mm-hmm. That's my understanding.
human factors work for medical devices.
Can we say some of the companies?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What?
Russ, do you want to say, or you want me to say?
Oh, well, that's a great
I want to
question.
see if you guys say the same companies. That's what I was trying to. And I know some are NDA, but I was just wondering.
You know what? I probably better not mention the companies.
See?
Just for those reasons.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
You know, my first instinct as somebody who consults was to say, of course, and I'm proud, and I wanted to show off. But on the other hand, I probably ought to keep that under wraps.
I get it. It. It's so weird, when you do consulting work. Guthrie and I have the same issue. We do like really exciting work and really fun work for really wonderful companies that are doing all this neat stuff, and then we can't talk about any of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like so frustrating. And I love it when people say, "Oh, can you share, what you've done for other companies like us?" And it's like, no.
Right. There are times we'll try to, really de-identify everything we've done.
I know, but
even that could be a challenge. And
even that might not be okay. I can say, however,
Good.
I am allowed to say one medical device company I did work for. It's been a while, which is Medtronic.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Great group.
A great group of people, and
I agree.
doing really wonderful work. And, for me, Russ, and I'd like, maybe you can say a few words about this. I remember the first project I was doing for them. Like I said, it was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of, again, navigating through the NDA stuff and figuring out what I could or couldn't tell my husband about it.
Exactly.
Right? And, but I remember at one point, him saying something like, you seem a little stressed working on this project. And I looked at him and I said, I'm designing something that a doctor is going to use in the operating room. It's life and death. If I don't get this right, someone could die. And most of the time, that's not what I'm working on.
Right.
And right now it is. And it's kind of stressing me out. So for us, we do some medical device work, but it's not primarily what we do.
Yeah.
But for you, and probably not everything you're doing is, I did some medical device stuff. That was not life and death.
Right.
Right. But isn't that stressful though?
It is. I think you're so involved in doing the work that you don't have much time for stress. And I really do. And often you can identify some of the problems right off the bat. There's some things that you're only going to uncover through, pretty serious usability testing. Other things you can uncover just from working in design for years and years. And so I think often you start making some I don't know, simple, for lack of a better term, low-hanging fruit changes that get you into that mode.
Yeah.
And I don't think you ever forget the seriousness of these kinds of products, but I think you start making contributions pretty quickly. And I think that starts carrying the day in terms of your thoughts. But, we work on everything from artificial hearts, actual hearts where they explant your honest to goodness heart. They put in 2 ventricles and you are now have a pump appended to your body. And, everything from that to, artificial pancreases. I'm not sure what the plural is for pancreas, to, robotic surgery systems and telehealth systems and all of those kinds of things. We are, and I guess this goes to our mission in life, really our lot in life that we've chosen is, we want to reduce any likelihood of things like use error. So those situations where people are trying to do the right thing and unfortunately design kind of prompts them, even sometimes leads them down a garden path to do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And those kinds of things yield an awful lot of deaths every year worldwide. But, we focus quite a bit in the United States. We do some international stuff. But right now, if you don't count COVID, I'm assuming this is going to be a big blip. But it's the 3rd leading cause of death in the United States is what one would call medical error.
Yeah, we don't want to hear about this, Russ.
No, I know. It's I'm not a lot of fun at
Let's
parties.
spend the rest of the podcast talking about each medical error in
one.
Length.
No,
right.
This is so. I mean,
I know.
No, I know this is true, and it's been true for
Sure.
a while.
Of course.
I have gone through, and I'm not going to get into details, but let's just say some fairly fairly major medical events that have required me to have a lot of contact with the healthcare system. Absolutely. And a lot of medical procedures that involved a lot of medical devices.
Exactly.
And being a human factors person, there's nothing worse than lying on a table somewhere where someone is using a medical device that if they make an error, it's going to have if the person or the machine makes any kind of error, this is not a good thing. And, the problem, of course, with being a human factors person is you never stop thinking about this, right?
I know.
We're the people that go into elevators at hotels and immediately start critiquing the buttons,
Absolutely.
which means that we're having these thoughts.
Right.
And it's been difficult because one of the things you want to do, as a patient is I'm going to trust my medical team, right?
Sure. Yep.
But then too much, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, it's so true. I'm rarely accused of knowing too much, but when it comes to this, I think you're right. I think it's a point where, oh my gosh, I'm almost thinking, okay, did you put that decimal in the right place when you program the infusion pump?
Are we getting any better at this?
Oh, no doubt about it. So a couple things have caused us to get better. One has been simply regulatory concerns. So FDA and other regulatory organizations have really taken up the issue, and they're requiring that people do use-related risk analyses, what we would normally call a task analysis, and identify potentially what could go wrong, what are tasks that are kind of critical, could lead to people getting injured or killed, and then usability testing those things, and usually simulated usability tests. But it's interesting that it's been the regulations that have driven the field as opposed to, just a desire for better and better products.
And they're pretty strict with that too, right? Are they still?
Are.
I remember a couple of years ago, we were working on, the defibrillators at airports that anyone is supposed to use, right? And we were working on user testing.
Yep.
A new version of those. And we actually, do you know Jeff Sorrow?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know him well. I've read his work, and if I recall, he's in Colorado.
Yeah, he is. He's wonderful. And for those listening, he's I think, I always he a black belt statistician, but he does a lot of quantitative analysis work, statistics for the UX field. Right. And so we brought him in on that project because I want, this was like, we had to go through the whole FDA approval, and I wanted to make sure we had this right. So I had him calculate for us how many people did we need to run through the user test in order to meet the FDA approval. And the answer was 240. Wow. And I was like, in the rest of our industry, we're used to doing user tests with like 8 people.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it was like, we have to user test this device with 240 people. That was quite the thing.
Is that what you decided to do, or did you end up doing fewer?
We had our client make that decision.
Okay.
And they said, yep.
Interesting. Good.
And that's what we did.
Yep.
And, it was, and it's interesting because it is a medical device, but it's used by just regular people walking through an airport.
Exactly.
So can I say what's just so strange about this whole thing?
What?
Because I'm an economist, and it's the strangest part is there are all these rules and regulations that's prompting all this change. You're doing statistically significant user tests with 250 people to eliminate any chance of very small anomalies that might happen, but the risk of you dying on the way to the hospital because you drove there is probably much higher than any of the risks that are actually happening once you step inside the building, and yet those risks are just, basically, they don't care about.
Russ, what do you think about that?
I don't think so. Actually, I probably need to look at the data here, but I think it's actually higher once you're in the hospital. There's an awful lot of contributors to this. Once you're in the hospital, of course, you're sick. So we have to somehow factor that in. And there are plenty of these deaths that we might attribute to use error, for example, that largely come from people who are in a pretty bad state. So they might not be terribly resilient or robust to begin with. So that's true. But there's so many devices and so many procedures and so many people in the healthcare system. It's probably the most complex system in the world, that there's lots of opportunity for these things to happen. Now, the nice part is because it's a somewhat resilient system, lots of times we can make a use error and kind of realize, oh, well, that was dumb, and go back and fix it, and it's no problem. Unfortunately, lots of times people are moving so fast and they get interrupted so much that they don't get the opportunity to fix them. So to give you an idea, let me see if I have these numbers off the top of my head.
I was going to say, so it's like, right? So it's like, what kind of risks are we talking about, right? So it's like, okay, so I'm assuming it's not the current risk of I've messed up. Here's the perfect example. I can give you a thought experiment.
Sure.
The machine has 2 buttons that are unlabeled, and if you press one of them, a robot saves the patient's life, and if you press the other, the patient immediately dies. Right. So that would probably be an unacceptable level of risk for use error, being 50-50. Okay. So are we talking about 1 in 100, 1 in 100,000, 1 in 100 million? What kind of just ballpark? What are we talking about here?
It's not clear. The way this started getting so much interest is there was a Institute of Medicine report that came out in 1999. So we're talking about 22 years ago. That suggested it was somewhere around, and I can't remember my numbers, but 344,000 people per year end up dying of medical error. And the interesting part about this is they decided to put that into terms that would be related to aviation. And that would be something like a wide-bodied jumbo jet crashing every other day in the United States.
Oh my goodness.
Since then, it's actually turned, these problems are underreported because it's really hard to understand exactly, how this person died. And there aren't a lot of incentives to go off and, kind of indicate how this person died.
It's not as obvious as, if
Exactly.
if a huge jet crashes,
it's very salient.
By the way, domestic airline travel is the safest way to travel in the United States statistically. I feel it's my duty to always mention that.
Me too. Yeah, no doubt about it. Now, one of the ways that domestic airlines got so good is they have a reporting system that reports not only things that go horribly wrong, but even near misses. And people are really encouraged to report these near misses. And there's almost something that's it goes towards your professionalism. And I think that's not always the case in healthcare. In healthcare, often it's you're better off sweeping things under the rug. And not only that, if a near miss happens on a plane, that is like the main event of your whole flight. If a near miss happens to a nurse while they're doing their work, that's like just one of 200 things that have happened in the past hour. And that nurse has to move on to the next hour. So they don't really even have time to reflect on this thing. And I think that really hurts our ability, and Sora would probably point this out too, from a quality control and quality improvement standpoint. We don't get the opportunity to have the feedback to continually go back and improve like aviation does. So instead, what we end up doing is simulated risk studies. So we simulate
because we don't have the data to actually find out what the real risk is.
And
That's
before you talk about the simulated risk, one of the questions that might be useful, I'm trying to wrap my head around how you determine, because in a medical context, people are. I'll give an example. All right. Yeah. I have a friend who had a relative pass from COVID, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But they were already quite ill. Sort of dialysis times a bunch, and had to go into medical appointments every week, anyways. Yeah. So the likelihood of them passing from other causes in the next couple months was very, very high. And technically, yes, the COVID was the cause of their passing. When you're talking about this kind of medical risk analysis, when you simulate it, the probability chart for a plane, if the engines don't explode and it crashes, it lands safely and everyone's fine forever, right? Whereas in a medical context, we'll all die eventually, and some of us are, not well, and that might be even in the next 24 hours. So how does the industry take that into account or deal with sort of that difficulty in teasing out, cause of death?
I think it's a real mess, to tell you the truth. And I think that's one of the problems we have pinpointing exactly what the incidence of this is. So if you look at the estimates, they're wildly variable. But interestingly, the estimates trend up, not because devices are getting more dangerous, but because people are getting probably better at identifying at least a contributing cause to a death, for example. But you're right, there's some pretty obvious ones. So for example, if an infusion pump, a common problem, and one you're probably familiar with, is death by decimal. So imagine somebody anticipates administering 5 milligrams per kilogram per hour of a certain medication and types in 5.0, but accidentally fat fingers it and it ends up 50.0. Now you're administering a 10 times overdose. And you might not have the immediate feedback. The person doesn't scream, for example, because you've made that decimal point error. You make that change real quick and walk out of the room. Now, they've done some things recently recognizing this problem, largely due to great human factors work that says, boy, 50 milligrams per kilogram over a period of an hour is not really a clinical dose. Are you sure you want to do this? And but even then, as you know, confirmation boxes and things like that, sometimes we go with the default. Hopefully the default is, no, I don't want to do this. But, people are moving fast and they've got a million things going on. So it's wildly variable. So recent estimates. So I'm trying to think of exactly when this is. A 2017 study in the Journal of Healthcare Quality, I think, or something similar, was about 4 times those estimates. And unfortunately, I don't have those numbers in front of me. I wish I did. And depending, you mentioned teaching, Susan, depending on where I am in my teaching schedule, I can remember them off the top of my head. But I must not have
If you
given...
just did a lecture on this.
I know, if I had just done a lecture on this, I would know off the top of my head, and you'd think, oh my gosh, he's just an encyclopedia.
He just has these numbers.
Yeah, but sadly, that's not the case.
Tell me about your book. Who's your book? Because your book is called Humanizing Healthcare, Human Factors for Medical Device Design. Yes. This just came out when?
Let's see. Not that I'm paying attention, but February 22nd, 2001. I'm sorry, 2021.
Okay. And who did you write this for? Who's the audience?
I really wrote it for, so I've taught human factors for a long period of time, and I'm particularly interested in healthcare. There are a lot of people who are now doing work in human factors and healthcare who have never had an introductory human factors class. They kind of get thrown into this situation and are asked to sort of,
they don't have a human, so they're doing human factors in healthcare, but they don't have,
that's exactly right,
like a degree in human factors.
That's exactly right. And now they might have a degree in quality, they might have a degree in statistics, they might be nurses or physicians, they might be medical, but they haven't had sort of this foundational work in what human factors is all about.
Yeah.
And as you know, human factors and user experience in areas like that need to be big tents that need to include all kinds of folks, from anthropology to healthcare to physiology, et cetera.
Yeah.
But I wanted them to have one source they could go to that teaches the basics of human factors in a medical context. So my hope would be anybody teaching an introductory class on human factors in healthcare would rely on a book like this. Also, many biomedical engineers are getting into this area, as they should, but I wanted it to be perhaps the first book a biomedical engineering student would see when it comes to human factors, so that hopefully it becomes their default reference. So in many ways, it's an introductory human factors book with very special emphasis on healthcare.
So if someone is, let's say, in the field of, in general, maybe they have a degree, or maybe they don't have a degree in this, but they've just been working as for instance, a user experience designer,
or an industrial designer, or exactly.
But they don't have a experience in applying that to healthcare, and they're interested in that. Would this also be a good book?
Absolutely. Yeah, it would be ideal. And I think one of the things I'm trying to do is make the science of human factors. So human factors is not only application, but it's a science, right? It's trying to make that accessible. So it's certainly trying to make it available so they know where to look, and it's trying to make it understandable so that they can kind of grasp it relatively quickly and kind of know what page to go back to when they find themselves in a situation where, oh boy, I know I've seen this before, but I don't recall the specifics, sort of like I did with those statistics a minute ago.
Yeah. So tell me, what do you think about, I don't even know if you know about this, but
sure.
what do you think about the whole job prospects? If I'm working on a master's degree in human computer interaction somewhere, but not necessarily. I know some programs, like I know, I am an adjunct professor at University of Wisconsin, and I don't work. I don't teach in the graduate program in Madison, but there's a human factors program in Madison. And they specialize in human factors for healthcare.
Exactly.
So, but let's say I'm not in one of those programs. Let's say I'm just in a regular, I don't mean to put that down, but a regular HCI program. But I'm interested in maybe doing human factors work. What's the job forecast like for human factors in healthcare?
It's exceedingly strong.
Hot.
Yeah, that's a better way of saying it. It's hot. There's so many opportunities. It's really unbelievable. And I think that's why so many people are moving into it. There's a giant need. People have recognized this, so that's important. People who have the right kind of personality and attitude are moving into it, but they don't necessarily have the training yet. And so we want these people, right? I mean, they have all of the prerequisites in terms of their attitudes and so forth. All they need to do is learn a lot of the nuts and bolts and even philosophy behind this. So that was kind of the idea behind the book. So I think what ends up happening when this, things like this, like hot job prospects, a lot of us get frustrated because, well, they don't have the appropriate background and so forth.
Yeah.
Instead, we're better off welcoming these folks and saying, hey, by the way, if you need resources, here they are. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do. It's not, I've read all your books, of course, and it's not as accessible as your books in terms of, really clarifying all things, because I think it's bigger and it's trying to introduce human factors, including some of the details in here. So I have chapters on, cognition and perception and control design and all of those kinds of things that you might see in an intro human factors book.
Yeah.
So, but besides the book, there's just huge opportunities for people in human factors and medical products. So if I were just to open up, Indeed.com, for example, I'm sure I would find human factors positions open at Abbott Labs, at Medtronic, at Google, at Apple, at, Becton Dickinson, just one right after another. At Intuitive Surgical, at Teladoc. And there's just not enough people to jump in and take these things.
But aren't we at this weird place, though, where I guess, Guthrie and I think Guthrie too, we're pretty big proponents of bring in, less experienced people.
Yes.
Train them well. It's worth it.
Yeah.
They may need more supervision.
Wait, what do you mean? We're proponents of it. We don't actually have to do the training.
Well, we bring on, I'm thinking about an internship position. We just found someone for, but there's a lot of my clients, who will ask us, hey, can you help us find a senior level person?
I know.
And it's like, okay, what about a junior person? Yeah, we need a senior level person.
Yeah.
And I get it. I really get it. But I just wonder if it's hard for junior level people without a lot of specific health experience. What? All right, here, I'm going to put you on the spot.
That's a good question.
What would you say to a junior level human factors person who wanted to get into medical device work but hadn't? What's
How
the
junior
one
is
thing?
junior? Because there's like junior, which is like
True.
I have a
I'm
master's in
gonna say-
HCI, and then there's
I'm
like
going to say they have a master's in HCI,
Okay.
Good.
but they've not done any healthcare work in their schooling or their any internships or anything. What's the one thing they could do that would help them be able to break into this?
I think there's two things. Sorry. Don't you
Two
hate when
things is
people change
great.
the question?
Two
Okay.
things is great.
The first and ideal, depending on their financial situation and timing and all those things, is an internship. So I would say, go work with Susan, go work with Research Collective, and get some experience under your belt. One of the things I've noticed is the world becomes your oyster for human factors people in all areas after about 3 years. During those first couple of years where you're finding your job, you're like, oh my gosh, I've got a master's degree. I should be a hot commodity. And people aren't taking a look at you. But after 3 years, they think you walk on water.
Yeah.
So that's one. The second one, I've forgotten what it is. Well, the second one is apply anyway. It's a numbers game. Whatever's required to get those first 3 years, do it. And some people are either going to be enlightened like you guys are and say, well, really what we're looking for is a person with the right attitude and the right, kind of cognitive abilities and so forth, and we'll help them get up to speed. Others will be so hard up that they just need somebody no matter what. In which case, that's great. You get in there. But so first, internship. If you can get it. Second, apply. And as usual, don't only send things out to HR. That's probably necessary, but it's not sufficient. Find out who the heck the hiring manager is and see if there's any way to get your resume to them or somebody they happen to know.
Yeah.
Those are the keys. But people are being forced to look for people without, 5 or 10 years of experience. And of course, the people with 5-10 years of experience are so well compensated and so well taken care of that it's kind of hard to get them to move anyway.
Yeah. Hey, I have another question for you.
Sure.
All right. So if you think about how to apply human factors broadly to the field of healthcare, one point of view might be, as we're designing these devices, right? Whatever the device is, we're gonna pay attention to the human factors and the user experience of the device in order to make it easier to use, in order to make errors less likely to happen through the way we've designed the device. And then another side of it is to look at is, okay, no matter how good a job we do on the design of the device, we have to also deal with the fact that people are going to make mistakes. In a healthcare context, they very often might be in, as you've mentioned, it's very busy, it's stressful, there's a lot of things going on. And so we have to take care of the process part of it, regardless of how well the device is designed.
Exactly.
Do you agree with that? Do you work with both of those sides? What are your thoughts on that?
We do. So, this from kind of your background, but largely we're interested in dealing anytime people are interacting with other people or interacting with technology. And it's simply because our background is to study the mind. And anytime the mind is involved, well, then that's kind of an area where we can contribute. Sometimes those minds are communicating with other people. Sometimes they're failing to communicate with other people. Sometimes they're interacting with devices, etc. But so some of the areas you described are, kind of process improvement, teamwork, communication, all of those kinds of things. But the idea that we're trying to take is from an engineering discipline, say, or from a design discipline, we need to be every bit as rigorous as, say, mechanical engineering or electrical engineering or any other kind of engineering. And we do put processes in place to do that. Related to that is this notion that if you think about your product as a system, right? Think about this thing as a system with a human on the end doing the work and kind of orchestrating, hopefully. The human is by far the most complicated part of that system. And they're the people who, end up determining whether the product gets built to begin with, what the product has in it, determine whether to buy the product, determine whether to use the product. They're at the receiving end of the product. So we have all these experts out there in mechanics and electronics and other kinds of things, but it's pretty rare that we have experts out there in human beings. And well, heck, that's our job. And it shouldn't be surprising now that there's lots and lots of opportunities in it because people recognize this.
Some of the things that I think are both very interesting and very challenging if you do, human factors work in this field is you've got that, you've got all the different factors that make this complicated are almost all at play. You've got the life and death situation sometimes. You have the high stress situation. You have the multiple user situation, right? Because you've got the doctor and the nurse and the patient, right? And there's interactions amongst that. You've got the situation where they often, a lot of times in a medical setting, it's possible that you have a nurse who, all they do all day is interact with this one device, but it's also very likely that they interact with like dozens of devices, and that, this one they might not use every day, 8 hours a day. So
that's right.
They're not super familiar with it.
That's
so
exactly
you've got, that you just have like all the possible human factors issues there are.
That's right.
All going on at the same time.
Exactly.
And a lot of time, if you're designing, an app for a dating app,
sure,
you don't have quite so many factors.
That's right.
Play,
That's exactly right. So it's in many ways to use the overused term, the perfect storm. So not only do those nurses, for example, end up using multiple products, they're using multiple brands of those products.
Right.
Often they're traveling nurses or folks like that. They might be assigned to different units during the same day. So different brands of the same type of product, different models of that product.
Right.
Etc. So there's just incredible opportunities for mistakes. And it's not because this is what kills me. The reason some of these problems are swept under the rug is because it's still, unfortunately, a bit of a culture of shame and blame. So if you make mistakes like us regular mortals will, then, you're written up or your reputation is diminished. And boy, those are really terrible things.
That'll really silence people.
I'm
wondering, I know that there's research that shows that if we go back to the airline industry,
sure,
there's research that shows that in countries that have a high power differential,
exactly,
then there are more errors and more accidents. So if the pilot and the flight attendant, or the pilot and the co-pilot, if the pilot is high power and everyone defers to that person, then the lower level people, like the flight attendant, are less likely to speak up, and then you end up with more errors and more accidents. Is that true in the healthcare system?
It is. It's being addressed, and it's gotten drastically better. So, crew resource management is one of the things you're describing, and this notion that in social psychology, there's this issue of power distance. And in some, cultures, the power distance is particularly high. That is, somebody who's achieved a certain level of achievement in their area should be treated with deference.
Yeah, you don't question what the
You
surgeon
don't question
is
them.
doing.
That's right. That has changed drastically in healthcare, and now you see it much more often. My mom was a nurse, and she used to describe that when the doctor walked in the room, you stood up and faced the doctor. And you referred to them as doctor. You never said their first name, anything of those. I mean, that would just be horrible. Real sign of disrespect. That's clearly not the case now. So I have spent, and continue to spend lots of times in surgical suites and things like that, doing observational research and interviewing in context and all those kinds of things. And it's much more. You're really encouraged to say, "Hey, are you sure that's the needle that you meant to use," etc. Now, some doctors take more kindly to that than others, but it really is encouraged.
What do you think the patients should have a role in this, or should, ideally, should we be in a place where patients don't have to be watching this? I mean, I say this because, again, being the human factors expert that
Sure.
I am, when I've been in these medical situations, there are things that I purposely do and don't do.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, I've noticed that sometimes in certain treatment situations, the patients are just gabbing away and talking about their weather and what they did. And it's like, I don't want to be unfriendly, but
Right.
I'm not going to say a word, right? I don't
Right.
want this person to be distracted by talking to me and trying to make me feel comfortable when they are dealing with a piece of equipment. So, I'm very quiet. I'm watching what they're doing.
Yep.
If I'm concerned that, usually there's a protocol where I've noticed where they do this and I'm not sure they did that. I mean,
Exactly.
I speak up.
I do too. Yeah.
So do you think,
have to.
I mean, I wish we didn't have to.
Yeah, but you absolutely have to. I mean, it's probably one of the biggest, well, I don't have the data for this, but I would guess it's probably one of the biggest determinants of outcome that I can imagine, is how much you're paying attention and how much you're facilitating communication amongst the healthcare providers.
Yeah.
Because, and how important it is to have somebody else there doing
being
that
your
for
advocate
you.
if you
Because
in
clearly,
addition, or if you can't.
Yes, because clearly you're not at your best. You're in the hospital, for Pete's sake. You might be drugged up. You might be, all kinds of problems. So having somebody, you might not be able to see the machine. Having somebody else politely, because you're also walking this line where you're trying not to annoy people,
Right.
but having them kind of watch out for you is critical.
Yeah, I mean, I've been really appreciative of my entire medical team, and I think they're very, very good. But there are times when I do speak up, and most of the time, the reaction I get is, good way to advocate for yourself. And I almost want to say, I shouldn't have to, but I never say that. But it's like, wow, I really shouldn't have to advocate for myself. You guys should have caught this.
I know. And I think that's true if you forget for a moment that these are humans.
I know. They are humans,
right? and even when you say that, right? I mean, you're somebody that knows this as well as anyone, right? This is your life's work.
Humans make mistakes.
Of course.
And the devices they're using may not have been optimally designed.
Exactly. This is getting even more important as all of these devices move home. So now we're trying to keep people in.
You mean in there? They come in there, right? Because you can do dialysis.
You sure can, and there's good reasons. Home. Absolutely, there's good reasons to do that, right? For it makes it a lot easier.
Right.
You're comfortable, etc. But now you've got somebody imagine you've been sent home from the hospital a little early, you're still a little groggy, you're still convalescing, and now you're trying to work some piece of equipment, and you still haven't figured out, how to not have 3 remotes to work your television any longer. Right,
And now you're supposed
like
to
me.
use this
And now you're supposed to
dialysis
use this.
machine.
Yeah. And as people get older, now they're dealing with displays where the contrast is not great.
Right.
The font size is too small. It was probably designed by a 23-year-old. And those things need to be considered and tested and so forth.
Okay, you have convinced me, Russ.
Oh, no.
No, you've convinced me I knew this was important, but this is a really
critical.
important field, and we need more people in it.
Yes.
And so hopefully we'll get more. Now, I know that I have a question for you about the programs, like you had mentioned to me before we started recording, that you co-founded a Human Factors master's program at Arizona State University, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the Human Factors program predates me. That's the program I was in, but I founded a Master of Science in User Experience.
And so is that a place? No, I'll back up.
Yep.
If I want to get a master's degree in Human Factors in Healthcare, can you recommend some schools?
Yes. So you mentioned one right off the top. That's one of my favorites, which is Wisconsin.
Yay.
I'm a big fan of Wisconsin. Pascal Carrion's there. John Lee, who is one of the best human factors folks I've ever run across, is there. And you've got the hospital right there.
Yeah.
Let's see, but I will mention a few others. Let me see if I can think of some of the others off the top of my head. Arizona State is a good one for this, and we have this great relationship with Mayo Clinic, which is right down the road. Okay. So I would look at that. I should probably think of some others. University of Minnesota is a good one.
Okay.
Those folks that I'm forgetting are going to be mad at me, but
well, if anyone's listening and we didn't mention your school or school you know of, just contact us.
And please do. Yeah.
We'll add it. I can add it to the blog where we write about the podcast episode.
Oh, that's great. That would be wonderful.
Okay, so in fact, I'll point it out in that blog. Yeah, go ahead.
I will mention another favorite. Texas A&M.
Okay.
Has a really nice program.
Wonderful.
With sharp students coming out left and right. Ohio State has some good folks.
So, Russ, thank you so much for joining us. I can't believe we managed to use up an entire hour. Almost.
I can. We always do.
You can?
Yeah, exactly.
So, is there anything we do? I mean, we haven't used up an entire hour. So if there's anything else you want to talk about or mention, this is your opportunity. Anything else you want to get out there in the world?
I do want to make sure. So I want to make sure this kind of work gets done. It's really important. It's really important that it gets done and critical for our healthcare. It's probably one of the most important things we can do in healthcare right now. So to that end, I want to make sure people let me know if they are interested in getting to this field. I'm happy to give them some guidance and point them in the right direction.
Wow.
And things like that.
That's a wonderful.
Sure, might as well.
That's a wonderful thing to put out there. All right, so then how do they get a hold of you?
Feel free to send me an email at Russ, that's me, at Research Collective. So it's research -collective.com.
Okay, and we'll put that in the blog post too.
Yeah, I really enjoy that kind of thing. I know you do too. But it's getting more people interested in the work we've chosen as our life's pursuit.
Yeah, that's wonderful. All right, so if you're interested in getting into human factors in the healthcare field, email Russ. He'd be willing to give you some pointers and some ideas about the best way for you to do that. Guthrie, do you have any questions that we didn't cover that you wanted to mention?
No. This is your your guys' field of expertise. You know.
Although you got excited about the economics.
Well, yeah.
I do too now. I think we need to talk more about this. I think trying to understand kind of the incidence of this above and beyond the regular incidence of death, especially when people are sick, is pretty important stuff.
Yeah. I just want to pimp some of our own stuff that we're working on.
Good.
We have a new behavioral economics fundamentals course that's free at courses.theteamw.com. People can check that out.
Yeah, we just posted that.
Wonderful.
Last week, right?
Yeah, I'm starting to work. The new behavioral economics certificate is out too. You can purchase that if you want. I'm starting to work on the new ethics certificate. That's going to take some time, but I'm working on it.
Russ, he's working on a series of courses.
Wonderful.
Ethics.
That's exciting.
Design.
And then if anyone wants to check out the formula, you can go to ethicalformula.com. That's basically up and running now. So
he has a formula that will give you an indication of whether your product you are designing is ethical or not ethical.
Wow. It's pretty fascinating.
I say they're generally ethical, they're generally unethical. I don't draw lines.
Is there a continuum, or are there two buckets?
Oh, no, that's what it's saying. There's only a continuum.
Okay, I assumed. Good.
Yeah. Now that I probably should have talked about those in the lead, but we wanted to get to the good stuff first.
I know. Well, we'll probably do a podcast episode on some of those anyway. Good. Russ, thanks so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure talking to you guys.
Take care, and I hope we run into you at some in-person conference or something.
Exactly. Even if we just happen to be in the same city, we can get together for coffee. And
I think that's a great idea. I think Guthrie and I have not been out to Arizona in a couple of years, so
we'd love to have you.
Post-pandemic, we'll come out.
Wasn't that long ago? Was it? It was like 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah, that's.
And seeing as no one's gone anywhere over the last year, I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, you're overdue. You need a little desert in your life.
Thanks, Russ. Take care.
Thank you. Great talking to you.
Bye.
Bye.